Symphony this weekend. You'd agree with me. He's sung everywhere, so we're lucky to have him, and lucky that he can come out and join us. So, would you like to tell us, talk to us about your experiences of growing up and singing?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, Scott. It's a real pleasure to be here and to meet you all. How many of you all are voice majors? 1, 2, 3, okay. And then what do you guys do?
Liberal arts.
Liberal arts?
Health psychology.
Okay, great, awesome. And so I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and went up to New York to go to school straight out of high school. And I ended up going to Juilliard, and I did my bachelor's, and I stayed and did my master's right after. And for me, a lot of I would say out of all of the singing that I do, I would say about 50% of it is opera. And then of the other 50%, 25% is concert work, like what I was doing with Spokane Symphony this weekend, whether it be that or like a Mozart Requiem or a, B minor mass or something like some, concert with orchestra. And then 25% is recital or chamber music. So usually just me and a pianist, or me and a guitarist, or me and a few string players doing like On Wind Like Edge or something like that. And I find that this mix is really good for me. It helps sort of keeps my chops up, in terms of singing with an orchestra in concert is different than singing in opera, as is singing recital. So it's all very different. And I find that all of these different elements help inform my work in the other. I think being a good recital singer makes me a better opera singer, and vice versa. And we can talk some about that today. But in the time that I grew up singing, coming of age after I finished school, I was really lucky in that I joined the roster of New York City Opera right out of school. At the time, New York City Opera was located in Lincoln Center, and they were doing a full season. They would have maybe 8 operas they would do in the fall. They would take the winter off because New York City Ballet used the State Theater for Nutcracker and for their January, February season. And then in March, New York City Opera would come back in the spring with like another 10 operas, 10 productions they would do. So it was a lot of operas. And when then we called them weeklies. So you were an artist that was you were on a weekly contract. So you were singing this role, you were maybe singing, Don Ottavio, you were covering Tamino, and also singing Raimondato and covering Don Curzio, So you're doing lots of different roles in lots of different shows, which was great because it gave me a lot of stage experience. It gave me a lot of experience working with different directors, gave me a lot of experience working with different conductors. I didn't do a young artist program. That's the kind of the mode that I think a lot of singers go with, and I think that's a really awesome way of doing it. You get that sort of USDA stamp from a young artist program. But that wasn't my path, and sometimes I wonder what would be different if I had done that. But for me, I just started performing, and being a weekly at City Opera, being on the roster there I was there from 2000 to 2005. So for 5 years almost, that was my young artist program. That was definitely a training program for me. Working with the coaches there as well was really, really important. And then, in between those seasons, during the winter months and during the summer months, you would go and audition for other programs, whether it be like Opera Theater of St. Louis or Glimmer Glass or Santa Fe Opera. And then after I finished at City Opera, I did the same thing at the Met for a couple of years, and I was a weekly at the Met and sang different roles, covered different roles, which was a very interesting, very different experience than what New York City was. New York City City Opera at the time, the Met is has the biggest budget, the most money of any opera company in Europe. I think New York City Opera, which was right across the street, probably ranked like 20th, probably 15th in terms of budget. So they were doing a lot with a lot less. And so it was a very interesting experience going to an opera company that had a ton more money than City Opera did. But, and then in between that was, I would go and sing in different opera companies, whether it be Opera Omaha or Memphis, or sometimes I would go to Europe, usually go to Europe about once a year and sing with an orchestra or an opera company over there. I would say now my career is such that I sing a lot of new music, a lot of modern opera. I sing large roles at smaller companies and then smaller roles at larger companies, which is really great. I love that. It's a lot of pressure to do big roles at big companies. It can be very stressful. So I like that balance. That for me, I've found my niche, and I'm very happy there. I'll probably talk about this today. We all become singers because we are inspired by incredible artists. For me, I was a kid. I saw my first opera, which was Il Trovatore, when I was about 12 years old. I still remember the cast. Some of them are still singing today. And Mark Rucker was the Handelman. And Barbara Deaver was the Azucena. And it was a fantastic cast. And I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. But then when I really sort of decided I wanted to be a singer was kind of around the time when the three tenors were just starting, like the Caracalla, the famous concert from Italy was a thing. And I was like, oh gosh, like that is just fantastic. I love that. I was a teenager and I thought it was the coolest thing. So, Domingo and Pavarotti, those are once in a lifetime in a kind of careers, and for, it's wonderful to dream that, but success as a singer is not just that. Success as a singer can translate into lots of different things. And I think for the vast majority of us, it's figuring out what it is for ourselves that we want to be, our lives in music, how we want music to play into our lives, and what the right balance is for us to feel happy and for us to feel fulfilled with that. I remember when I was first starting off going to schools and auditioning, it was the question that was always asked. And I remember thinking at the time, it's a valid question, but I was like, oh, I don't know if it really applies or if it's really true. And I think the more time I spend in music, the more time I spend in opera, the more I think it does. And that was the question: is show of hands, how many of you want a career in music? Or ask another question. Show of hands, how many of you need a career in music? And that is that willingness to sacrifice. Like, I need, it's not just a want, it's a need. You need to have music. You need to be a musician as your career. And that sort of focus is what is the minimum that's necessary in order to have a career in music. And I feel really strongly about that. It can be a very hard career. The rewards are wonderful. The rewards are fantastic. But if you're lucky, you travel a lot, which can be hard, which can be really fun and exciting, but it can also be very hard. It's a lot of work. It's very stressful. There's also there are lots of sides to it too, and we can talk more about that today too. I would say before we start singing, one of the things that I also think is really important is, it occurred to me that you didn't need, this was a big load off my shoulders when I realized this. You didn't need to have the most beautiful voice to we all want that, of course. We all want our technical ability to be as refined, as exceptional as possible. But there are lots of singers out there. And, I think once you sort of achieve a certain level of vocal consistency, then, there is no flawless technique. There is no perfect technique. But I think once you achieve a certain level of consistency, you have a professional ability in singing. So then what's going to set you apart? What's going to create the success for you in singing? And to me, the thing is your ambition. How ambitious are you? How willing are you to hustle? How willing are you to put in the work to create opportunities for yourself, to get people to pay attention to you, to get people to hire you, to create other opportunities for yourself? That sort of, reaching out to presenters, contacting artistic administrators, knowing that you're going to be singing with the symphony in one city, so you ask while you're there, can I audition? You contact the opera company and say, can I sing for you while I'm there? Or you're going to be, you're going to be in an area where this conductor is working, and maybe you have an opportunity in someone who knows that conductor, who can recommend you, or a friend of yours who's on the roster of an agency that you would like to be with, and so you ask your friend. Like that kind of hustle is very important. That's as important as the quality of your voice, at least. In fact, some people, and I tend to agree with them, it's almost more important than the quality of your voice. If you've got this much vocal talent, but only this much ambition, you're only using that much of your talent. But if you've got this much vocal talent and you've got this much ambition, you're using all of your talent all of the time, and then some. And really, and then you can take off. We were talking earlier. Scott and I were talking earlier this morning. There is a singer that I know who is a fine singer. He's a professional singer. He has all the ambition in the world, and he has a fantastic career. And I think I admire him. I admire him very much for what he's been able to achieve. It's really, really fantastic. So, with that said, who would like to sing first? Yes. Okay. Great. What's your name?
Carmen.
Carmen. Excellent. Nice to meet you.
Mr. Redder, do you need this?
And Carmen, you can take your mask off.
Yes.
You're singing Gretchen? Just Gretchen? Or you have, how many pieces do you have, Carmen?
I have 2 pieces, Gretchen, Amstrad, and Pianjo.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent. Which would you like to sing first?
Can I do Gretchen first?
Sure. Beautiful, beautiful, Carmen. That's lovely. I love how committed you are. You're really in it. That's really wonderful. That's great. Now, if I keep, I can take my mask off if I keep some space with this. So that's really great. I want to start at the beginning. Just a sort of a stylistic note. I would shy away. I wouldn't do portamento.
Okay.
And Schubert.
Okay.
I think keep your intervals clean. That's a little more Italian, and I
Okay.
think for a German, Schubert especially, I would just keep those intervals clean.
Okay.
Mozart, opera, you can do it some, but like you know, choose those moments. Mean to do it. Make a specific choice. But in Schubert, I wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's start at the beginning. I want you. Let's see. I'm going to ask Scott to play the. I don't want to talk about voice or technique so much, but I do want to talk a little bit about breath.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask Scott to play the beginning, and I want you just to breathe as you're about to sing. And I want you to, instead of actually phonating, instead of singing, I want you to hiss where you would sing. And I want you to sing, use your breath the way that you would do when you're singing. So if it's, so meine Ruhe ist in, go, imagining yourself singing it. Let's just try that for a couple phrases, okay? Let's try it again. So I'm hearing the pulse. And what I want is because our breath doesn't pulse like that. We articulate, but our breath is consistent, right?
Yes.
Our breath, the air doesn't stop. The air continues to flow. So feel that long just flow of air, okay? Try it once more. Really at the end of your breath a couple of times there, right? So how can you breathe deeper? Can you manage the breath before? Understanding that, because right now it's just air. We're not putting any articulation, we're not putting tone or anything with it. Can you breathe deeper so that understand, okay, this phrase is a little longer, so I need to make sure that I have enough air, or manage my air in such a way so that the flow is consistent, right? Try it once more, just like this. Just as far as we just went. Let's try it again. Good. Now let's sing. Describe it.
It felt more controlled and felt like I was prepared better for this.
Okay, good. I also felt did anyone hear any difference? Yeah? I felt like your voice was much more connected to your air, and I felt I had a little bit more bloom on the voice.
Okay.
Yeah? I thought it was really pretty. Be careful the nim or there's a portamento.
Yeah.
Take that out, okay? Try not to do that. Good. So there you are very good. So that's an exercise. I think it's good to have be able to do it with the pianist, but that's something we can do on our own.
Yeah.
You know, but we can do it with a recording. You know, if we feel like we need the tempo to pushing us through, to really plan how you're going to breathe, and it's an easy to help really feel your air. If you don't want to do an S, sometimes you can do it an F. or if you want to put a little tone on it, sometimes I'll do a V, just to maybe put a little pitch on it. That way it really helps us feel our air and then how we're going to manage our breath when we sing. So that's really good. I want to talk to you a little bit about Gretchen. Tell me about her.
She's spinning at her spinning wheel, so that's the piano.
Yeah.
And she's reliving these memories of her love, and she's just totally distraught and like off the deep end because she can't be with him.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of like teetering between this, like trying to keep her work going and trying and thinking about how she can't have him and like kind of lusting after him and reliving moments and being distraught.
Have you ever experienced what Gretchen has experienced?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a very like not immature, but more of like a teenager viewpoint of love, where she's like she can't have him, and it's very like I'm gonna die because I can't have him.
Yeah.
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 I've been in that situation before.
I mean, I think it's also, and it doesn't even, this is one of the things that I find often. I remember I had a teacher once who said, when you're, you might be doing an opera where you're playing the King of Sicily, and his famous line was, how do you play the King of Sicily when you've never been a king and you've never been to Sicily? How do you know how to do that? And I think, even if you haven't experienced exactly what Gretchen's experienced, there has to be a way in which we connect with her experience, with what we connect with what is happening in the song, and we make it our own. We find a way of like, well, I definitely know what it's like to want something and not have it, or be denied it, and to really go for it. Or to really regret not having it. I know what that feels like, even if I haven't experienced specifically what it is. My own heart can put on this experience what it is that I know and I've had happen to me. I think that's a very useful tool. Don't feel like you're locked into exactly what the text says, but what the sentiment of what it is, what the angst of the conflict is important. So I would think that's also, there's also another element to it. She's sitting on this spinning wheel, and there's this feeling of distraction, right? She's working at her wheel, and so she's, when we do something, it could be when we're driving, or when we're, riding our bike, or, we're, licking envelopes, or like whatever it is, some sort of mundane task. That's when our minds just really start to wander, right? And you're just doing this task, but you're still actively doing the task, but your mind is somewhere else, right? And that's a little different. And so when you sang it the first time, I got you very active. Like you're seeing everything. It was very good. It was very specific. You knew what you were singing. That was great. I want you to do that dude, she's just at her wheel. She's here. She's just at her wheel. She's not looking all around. She's working, and she's just lost in reliving this scenario, right? See if you can, which makes it a much more intimate expression. And it's like we're observing you do this, as opposed to you selling it to us.
Okay.
All right? Let's see if we can start at the beginning, and let's see if we can do that. Do you want to try sitting and doing it?
Yeah.
Can we try that? So you'd be sitting at a wheel.
Yes.
And I think, and let's put you at a little bit of an angle. So, you don't have to direct it at anything. You're just kind of in this wheel, but I want you to, in this action, but I want you to really feel what it is that's going on in the song.
Okay.
Okay, so you can do that. Okay, good. Forget our breaths. Don't forget your breaths. Try it once more. Okay, good. You're lowering your voice. You need more air.
Okay.
All right. Try giving a little bit more air there.
Okay.
Can we try it from? Yeah. Breathe. Good. What do you think's happening now?
Now she's living more in that moment that she's.
Yes. And what's happening to her as she puts herself into that moment?
Her emotions are changing and she's
Yeah.
becoming more excited because she's
Okay.
feels like she's there again.